Welcome back, folks. Cognitive Awareness with a Touch of God, bringing you episode 5, learning about our emotions. An interesting thing happens to us. When we're born, we're introduced to other humans, parents. We're introduced to grandparents. We're introduced to family members, siblings, friends, relatives, all of that. We're introduced to all of these people. As an infant, we have no understanding of what this truly is. From our brain's perspective, all we're doing is recognizing movement and sounds, but we don't know what those things really mean. So as we learn to grow in our development, we gain things like communication, certain words that are repeated to us over and over, helping us to understand what some physical thing represents. This is a washcloth. This is a diaper. This is daddy. This is mommy. All of these things are presented to us. We also start understanding what emotions are when our parents tell us that hurts, that's pain, that makes us sad, that makes us happy. Then we recognize how we're kind of feeling inside ourselves when they're explaining that to us. When a baby sees those chimes spinning around in its bed, it doesn't know what it is. It just knows it's hearing a very pleasant sound, and these things are moving around. And the mommy and daddy will tell the baby, this is beautiful, this is nice, this is comfortable, this is happy, this feels good. So they'll introduce us to those emotions as we start learning in early stages. What tends to be the problem over years is the fact that if our parents are too busy to explain to us what deeper emotions are, we don't really understand it fully. We may go through elementary school and start recognizing words, and teachers might use words that seem familiar, like excited or sad or pleased or happy, but it's up to those teachers to help us define what it is. When we come home from school, do we go over that with our parents? And do our parents show us an example in our lives of when we were that emotion? When was it that we felt cheerful? When did we feel fearful? When did we feel tense? Do we even know what those mean? And do our parents know what those mean in order to be able to relay it to us? So over our years of development and into our adulthood, we create patterns of understanding. We only know what we know. It's a good phrase that everybody uses. You only know what you know. Well, that's great, but let's learn what we know and make sure that what we know is actually beneficial, whether it's to teach somebody else or whether it's to help us through our tough times. Because when you're feeling confused, baffled, or in doubt, you got to know and understand what that means and what level of an emotion it really is. Because a lot of people use canned emotions to define how we are. Oh, are you feeling sad? Does that mean, yes, that's the all-encompassing word that means I'm sad? So I could have a different level of sad. Maybe I have a strong sadness, something like devastation or hopelessness. Or maybe it might be a mild or a soft sadness, like I'm feeling disenchanted or deflated. So understanding what these differences are is really important to how we handle it. So what this podcast is going to do is just kind of review the levels of emotions that we have and what we go through and give us a better understanding of what it is so that we can actually better cope when we're in the middle of an emotion. But you can't cope with sadness if you don't really know what level of sadness you have. It's up to the person that you're expressing it to try and figure that out. And in this world, folks, the way we're living our lives today with this social media stuff and these LOLs and OMGs, it's almost impossible for the other person to really know what's going on inside somebody's head. So we're going to kind of dissect these down a little bit and just give you categories for certain emotions. So before we get into this, we want you to just understand that these podcasts are not a one and done. These podcasts are going to be designed so that you can go back to them over and over and over again. And if there's a certain emotion that you're going through that you really want to focus on, then you can come back to the podcast and rewind it or fast forward it to that point. That way you can help yourself grow with it instead of just trying to listen to this once and thinking you have it all figured out. We're going to start with understanding what feeling happy is like. Now there's strong feelings, there's moderate feelings, and then there's mild feelings. So we're going to go through a list of those. We're also going to be dealing with what levels of scared can we be and how can we deal with it. Then what about feeling confused? Or feeling sad, like I mentioned before. Another one is feeling angry. There are levels of anger that all of us tend to show. One way or the other, we show this when we get so completely frustrated or furious with something and everything comes and boils up and we explode. So our job is to better understand what level of anger we're in. Then we're also going to talk about feeling love. Yeah, that's right. There's more than one level of love. So we're going to deal with these as we go through. I'm going to just start at the very beginning with feeling happy. So we're talking about strong, moderate, and mild. So I'm going to review these real quick. So strong feelings of happiness are going to be things like being excited or elated, ecstatic, marvelous, terrific, energized, loved, thrilled, or uplifted. So when you're talking to somebody and the question comes out, hey, are you happy about that? If you're really, really crazy happy about it, give them one of those words. Yes, it's terrific. I'm thrilled. I'm absolutely excited about this. That lets people know that you're on a really intense happiness level. So that's really important to be able to figure that one out. The next level is going to be moderate feelings of happiness. So when we go over these words, you're going to actually get a better feeling or a better understanding of why these are separated in the way they are. So moderate feelings of happiness could be being justified or maybe resolved, feeling valued, encouraged, optimistic, joyful, cheerful, relieved, appreciated, confident, respected, admired, accepted, amused, delightful, alive, or fulfilled. So just with those words in general, folks, you can kind of see the difference between being in an extremely happy state or a moderate happy state. Mild feelings of happiness: tranquil, content, relaxed, glad, good, satisfied, peaceful, hopeful, pleased, or flattered. So here's something for everyone to understand. This is a struggle that parents go through with their children all the time, or also with other people, is when you ask somebody how they're feeling, when you actually ask that question, as the person asking it, if you're genuinely concerned about that person, you're hoping to get one of these levels of response. Because you know this person. Your gut is telling you, man, they're having a tough day. I want to find out how they're feeling. How did they feel when this little thing happened? You know, Bobby struck out playing baseball. I wonder how he feels. Or he hit a single, or he hit the game-winning run. Or Susie stubbed her toe. How does she feel? When you provide people with an understanding of levels of emotion, they can better relate to how they're feeling, especially when it's communicating with you or with others. One of the things that happen consistently with people, especially when the communications start breaking down, when you ask somebody how they're doing, how you doing today? Good, good. Good is a mild form of happiness. So good is probably not something that we want to be happy with, so to speak. It's something that we want to address and say, so that's really not all that great. What was it that brought you to good? It's a conversation starter at the very least. Because good is only a mild level of happiness. Yes, it's happy, but good can be better. Alive, fulfilled, that's medium, right? Why not get excited or elated or ecstatic? Those are strong feelings of happiness. So when somebody's giving us a response as to how they're feeling and they say the word good, you know, how was school? Good. All right, so good was okay. That means, you know, nobody beat you up. Nobody pulled on your hair. It's kind of humdrum, isn't it? So our job is to really understand what these levels represent, and then that helps us work with the person that we're talking to, as well as our own selves. When somebody's asking us a question and we want to say, you know what, I'm not good. I'm better than good today. I'm delightful. This is something that is unbelievable to learn. And folks, I do this all the time. When I'm at a grocery store or at a gas station or anywhere where there's interaction with people I don't really know, and somebody says, hey, how you doing today? You know what I do is I come out with something that's extremely good. I go to the strong feelings. I go marvelous. I'm feeling terrific, energized, thrilled. I say those things because you know what that is? It catches on. People get a smile. When somebody comes in and they say that their day is phenomenal, they're not necessarily going to be saying, oh, well, my day sucks. You know, it's not going to necessarily be like that. So when you address people that you don't even know, why not just hit them with everything? Let them know the level of emotion that you're in. The next emotion is scared. Levels of being scared. It's like, wow, I didn't know that. I thought when I was scared, I was scared. I didn't know that there was something different. So we're going to go through the strong feelings of being scared. So again, think about this as a child. As you're a child and you had a bad dream. Or you're a child and you're going to the first day of school. Or you're a child and someone asks you a hard question or a personal question about your family or your parents. You know, there's different levels that's going to bring you into scared. It is all about the person, but still, let's go over these lists to try and get a better understanding. Strong feelings of scared, fearful, panicky, being afraid, being shocked, overwhelmed, intimidated, desperate, frantic, terrified, vulnerable. That's a big one. That's a big one. Vulnerability. We could have a whole episode just talking about vulnerability, and maybe we will someday. Horrified, petrified, appalled, feeling dread or tormented. Okay, so those are pretty intense words. Those are pretty intense levels of being scared. Moderate feelings of being scared. Tense, threatened, uneasy, defensive. Oh my goodness. All right, folks, anytime you get into a confrontation with somebody, conflict, defensive has a tendency to be a dominant emotion. But when we're looking at this, guys, it's in the moderate level. We can go beyond defensive. When we're having a tough time with somebody, we can get into overwhelmed or intimidated or panicky or horrified. I mean, seriously, folks, defensive is moderate. Keep that in mind. How about insecure or skeptical? I'm very apprehensive. That means I'm scared of doing something for whatever reason, mostly the unknown. Suspicious. You don't trust anybody, so you've got some fear in that. Alarmed, shaken, swamped, startled, guarded. Guarded is important too, because when you become guarded, we as humans tend to put up bigger walls to protect ourselves. It's not intense, but it's right down the middle of pretty darn powerful. So when you're guarded, that means you're just protecting yourself. No matter what's coming, you're just going to throw up a wall and say, I'm going to be good on this side. How about stunned or awed? Not odd like as in an odd fellow, but odd as in A-W-E, odd. Wow, I can't believe that just happened. Mild feelings of being scared. So these are more like everyday occurrences, like at work. You're supposed to finish a report by the end of the day. Now, because you're not sure you're going to get it done, we might get a little bit scared about it. Anxious is one of those mild feelings, but it's still pretty darn important. So reluctant, anxious, impatient, shy, nervous, unsure. Again, another trusting issue, unsure. Just like we were talking about before with the guarded, when you start guarding yourself and you're unsure, that's dealing with trust issues. Unsure is just the mild version of what guarded is. You can be unsure, but if you get a little more intense in your scared emotion, then you probably step right up into the guarded state. How about timid or concerned or even perplexed? Maybe doubtful. Those are all mild feelings of being scared. Now we're getting into confusion. Feeling confused. The strong confusion. Bewildered. Trapped. Trapped. Come on, folks. How many times can we go through our lives and look back on a moment where we felt like we were trapped, whether it was in a relationship, at a job, in our car, in traffic? Trapped, we're talking things like anxieties, those intense emotions. Okay? How about immobilized, paralyzed, stagnant, directionless, flustered, baffled, or constricted? Folks, our body tells us when we're constricted. If we're feeling like we can't move or we don't have any room, like somebody's talking to us and they put us in a corner and we can't escape and all we're doing is receiving the blah, 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 we can get into an intense level of constriction. It could even affect our heart, our breath, our lungs, our muscles, and our ears are going to get popping hot. So constricted is pretty intense. Getting into a moderate feeling of confusion. Foggy, hesitant, torn, misunderstood. Very common right there, folks. Being misunderstood. I think that is a driving force to a lot of lack of desire to communicate with people. If you talk to somebody over and over again about the same things and nothing's happening, no changes are coming, you might be feeling misunderstood. Like, wow, what am I saying wrong? Why are they not getting it? It's not that you're going to be very intensely feeling it, but you're going to feel a confusion like, why can't I express myself? Are they misunderstanding me or what? Okay. Doubt, troubled, disorganized, ambivalent, awkward, and puzzled. Usually when we're being misunderstood, we're also probably showing a lot of signs of being puzzled. I can't figure this out. They're either understanding me and don't care, or they don't understand me and I got to figure out why. So that's kind of like being puzzled. And then mild feelings of confusion. Mild means it's just going to be a kind of a light and fluffy, kind of like surprised or a little unsettled, kind of unsure. Distracted is good. That kind of happens to everybody, doesn't it? Being distracted is a common emotion to be dealing with every day. If your brain goes a mile a minute and you have 25,000 things that you think about in a day, there's a good chance that you may have a lack of focus and become distracted quite often and very easily. But the good thing is that it isn't an alarming emotion. It is a mild emotion, so it's something that can easily be corrected. That's another part of this whole practice, folks. We're looking at the levels of these emotions, and when we understand them, we know that when somebody is in a strong feeling, then there's a chance it's going to be a difficult thing to pull them out of. When they're moderate, it's still going to be a struggle, but not quite as intense. And then when it's a mild feeling, then there's a chance that there's going to be able to be some quick recovery from it. Being bothered, undecided, uncomfortable, and uncertain. Those are all mild feelings of confusion. So you're catching on to this, right, folks? Levels of emotion help us better understand where we are and where somebody else is. So whether we're being healed or being helped, or whether we're helping, it's really key to be able to grasp and understand these emotions and where they are, where they stand. That way we know where our path lies next. What kind of work is ahead of us? So strong feelings of sadness. We just touched on it at the beginning. So this is pretty interesting because we can go through our lives and remember moments where we were sad. The dog died. That's pretty sad. That's pretty emotional. But if we had a parent die or a sibling or a child, you're going to have levels of sadness. If you didn't get that raise at work, or if you forgot to put that report in and at the end of the day, you're kind of feeling bummed about yourself. So there's a level of sadness that differs based on the situation. So let's talk about the strong feelings of sadness. Folks, there's quite a bit, but listen in. It's going to be pretty eye-opening. Strong feelings of sadness: devastated, hopeless, sorrowful, depressed. All right, raise your hands if you've ever been depressed or if you're depressed right now. This is a major emotion, very intense emotion, depression, because it's being treated more now than it ever has been in the history of humanity. Depression. And you know what's even more interesting? Is kids are depressed now, when it used to be only an adult thing. How about wounded or hurt, drained, defeated, exhausted? I think if you're defeated, you end up getting exhausted from the defeat. Helpless, crushed, worthless, dejected, rejected, humbled, empty, miserable, distraught, deserted, burdened, demoralized. Folks, I think the list of strong sadness emotions are demoralizing. It's just incredible. We're not even done the list yet. Those are just the strong sadness emotions. Demoralizing. How about condemned, terrible, unwanted, unloved, mournful, pitiful, discarded, or disgraced? Those are strong emotions of sadness. Next list, which is moderate: lonely, neglected, isolated. Now, just those three right there, folks, the three first ones I talk about, those can lead to a stronger feeling of sadness. You get a hold of this concept. We're going through the levels to understand that when somebody goes from being slighted to disgraced or discarded, that's a pretty good jump. That's going from a moderate emotional trauma to a major emotional trauma. How about abandoned, regretful, resigned, drained, slighted, deprived, wasted, disheartened, despised, disappointed, inadequate, dismal, unappreciated, discouraged, ashamed, distant, or disillusioned? Folks, I think I've just covered 300 emotions in this part of our podcast. And we're not done yet. We're just barely halfway into our understanding of emotions and levels of emotions. This is just to the point of sadness. What's good is it's helping us recognize. Remember, the episode before was about recognizing our situation and being able to understand how do we cope with what we're going through. If we don't understand the levels of emotions, then we're probably not going to be able to figure out a way to resolve it. Mild feelings of sadness. Before I go into this list, I'm sure that every one of us is hearing this and going, I really didn't realize that there were that many words connected with the concept of sadness. Sadness probably has the most out of all the words relating to itself. And it's pretty unfortunate, but that's what we've gotten ourselves into. So mild feelings of sadness: sorry, lost, bad, disenchanted. So bad, that's a good one that everybody uses way too often. But it's appropriate for being a mild sadness. So feeling bad is a mild level of sadness. but it also is something that can help us clearly understand where that person is with their belief system and how they should treat other people or how they should be treated. Disenchanted, deflated, apathetic, or disturbed. Pretty important to be able to figure out these levels of emotions. The next level is going to be angry. Levels of anger, folks. You're not going to be surprised in any of these, I don't think. So starting just with strong feelings of anger. Strangled, furious, seething, enraged, hostile, vengeful, abused. All right, just stopping on abused. There is a difference between feeling abused and being abused. They're both pretty intense, but I'm going to tell you, one is a lot more intense. If you're being abused by somebody verbally or physically, there isn't a word on here for the strong feelings of anger that will quantify or qualify the level of anger that we may be going through when it's happening. Abused in the strong anger emotion means that somebody's not respecting us and could care less about us, and they would be willing to walk all over us. Hateful, humiliated, sabotaged, betrayed, repulsed, rebellious, pissed off, outraged, fuming, exploited, throttled, mad, spiteful, patronized, vindictive, used, or incensed. And those are all strong feelings of anger. You can relate to it. I can go through every one of these lists, and every one of these lists I've felt that emotion. It isn't a surprise to me. Not just because I've read them in a dictionary and understand what the dictionary's description of it is, but because I felt it. I've gone through it. Maybe it's with the same situation in my life. Maybe it was when I was addicted to alcohol and I could get into these anger moments because alcohol can tend to pull that out of people. So it becomes more clear to me and to others when they see these emotions, where do they go when they're stumbling? Where are we going? And does it make sense that we get into a strong feeling of anger when we're just kind of lightly being tweaked? But you know what? Sometimes what we feel inside is the truth. Just being able to put a name to it, a label to it, helps us understand where we are and where we stand with it. Moderate feelings of anger. Ridiculed, resentful, disgusted, smothered, frustrated, stifled, offended, infantilized. That basically means you feel like you're being treated like a kid. Controlled, peeved, annoyed, agitated, irritated, exasperated, harassed, anguished, deceived, aggravated, perturbed, provoked, dominated, coerced, or cheated. Cheated not necessarily like being cheated on. Cheated like it wasn't really fair and you really took advantage of me. You didn't take my emotions into account when you did that. So I feel like you cheated me out of my happiness, out of my joy, out of my love, out of my existence, out of my job. So you can understand that one. Mild feelings of anger. It's nice that there aren't that many of them, but the fact that there aren't that many means that we tend to go a little bit deeper than just a mild feeling of anger. Uptight, dismayed, tolerant, displeased. Okay, folks, tolerant is an important one. Tolerance. What we tend to do in relationships is we tend to use the word, okay, I'm going to tolerate this. I don't like what's happening, but I guess I can tolerate it. This is a mild feeling. That means you actually are angry at a situation, but because you're committing to tolerate something, you're giving into the anger. You're sacrificing a piece of you for the sake of not going to another level of anger. You don't want to go and become betrayed. You're going to tolerate your partner's behaviors. Good thing is that we get into a positive side now. We're going to get into feelings of love. So, unfortunately, there aren't as many emotions driven through the love concept as there are through sadness or anger. But that's okay. That just kind of tells you what exactly this human is figuring out and how we're going about our lives. If we can find more words to describe anger and sadness than we can love, then we, as a culture, have a major problem. But that's okay. This is what we get to do. We get to understand it so that we can cope with it, deal with it, and put our best foot forward. So strong feelings of love. Devout, desire, lust, passion, worship, yearning, idolize. Those are strong feelings of love. And as you guys are listening to those words, you can almost see the addiction behind a lot of these words, right? Lust, desire, worship, idolize. Those words right there mean that we have probably got ourselves out of our balance, and we believe that the thing that we're loving is so incredibly important and probably more important than us. If we're idolizing somebody, that means we're probably devaluing ourselves because we don't think we're as valuable as they are, and we're putting them on a pedestal. Pretty incredible when you start dissecting each one of these emotions. Moderate feelings of love: adore, affectionate, cherish, enchanted, fancy. Not like, ooh, that's fancy. It's more like fancy. I fancy what they do. I fancy their style. I fancy the way they dress, the way they hold themselves. Enamor, infatuated, rapture, zeal, or longing. Moderate feelings of love. Now, when we take a look at that last one, longing, that's almost taking you out of love and into sadness. Because if you're longing for something, or if you long for it, there's a possibility you're going to reach yourself into a negative emotion and sadness. It might be mild sadness, but still, you can see the crossing over of these two. If I long for something, I'm dependent on it. If I can't get it, then I miss it. If I miss it, then I become sad. But it's still an emotion from love. Mild feelings of love: appreciate, attraction, enchant, enjoy, magic, or a spark. So mild feelings of love. As we start to learn and understand, when we say to somebody, I love you, we can go through these emotions and understand where we are with that individual or with our emotions. You can say that to a dog and say, oh, I love you, I love you, I love you. Now, does that mean you're at the point of idolizing it or lusting for it? Probably not. That would be taking you into a different illness. It might be more in the moderate feelings, like you adore your pet. So anyway, folks, that's a quick list, a run through of levels of emotions. All we have to do is really gravitate to it, understand it, think about these words, review it over and over and say, where am I in this emotion? The reason we have levels is so that we can really understand where we are or where somebody else is in their feelings. So enjoy this, work on it, repeat it, listen to them over and over again, because as you start listening to it, you might be able to turn back the page. Think about something that happened last week, last month, or 10 years ago that brought you to a certain level of an emotion. You can better understand why you got there if you understand what there was. How did I get so angry? Well, it's real simple. What level of anger did you feel? And why did you feel that during that situation? And I mentioned before, there's a possibility that we actually overreact or we shoot into the strong level of emotions when the situation calls for a moderate to mild. Okay, but that's definitely something that has to be learned. It's a big skill, but it's probably one of the more critical pieces of being able to heal from anything, is to be able to understand what your emotions are, how you get to those emotions, and how you can better control them based on your belief system and your thought patterns. Thank you very much, folks. I appreciate your time on this, and I hope you get to learn more about emotions by listening to this podcast several times. We look forward to presenting our next podcast, and we hope that you have a beautiful day. Bring yourself to a happier state than just mild happiness. Thank you very much, folks. Bless you all, and we love you.